Hello everyone, this is the Gridiron Review, and this is our NFC East offseason preview. Starting with the Washington Commanders, some notable free agents are Taylor Heinicke, Trey Turner, Cole Holcomb, and Jeremy Reeves. The team needs are wide receiver depth, tight end, offensive line depth, defensive end depth, linebacker, and corner. A couple of free agent targets they could be interested in, Mike Gesicki, Dalton Schultz, and Chris Barnes. They have their first round pick 16. A couple targets and fits is Pete Skoronski. Andrew Voorhees, now that he's injured, is going to be a day 2 pick, or Devon Witherspoon. A couple of keys to the offseason for the Commanders: build around Sam Howell, but bring in a very capable veteran backup that he can learn from, as well as push him. Find another piece in the wide receiver room that can be used for depth behind McLaurin, Dotson, Samuel, and maybe Diami Brown. Find a new tight end. Logan Thomas just isn't it anymore. He's hurt too much. He's over 30. And you could use youth there, whether it be through the draft or signing someone like we mentioned, Dalton Schultz, Mike Gesicki. Most importantly, this team is just lacking depth all over the place. We said it last year that they were going to be a sleeper team. We had them winning a lot more games than they did if they didn't have injuries, but they did across the field. And especially on defense, they have great starters, but beyond that, their depth is decimated. And the linebacker room, you got to bring back Holcomb, unless he's asking for way too much. But you need a better backup than David Mayo. And then lastly, you just need to add another cornerback to the room, maybe another safety, but you just need more bodies on the defense that can play starters or injured in place of injured players. The New York Giants, a team that's way ahead of schedule, have already made a couple big moves. They signed Daniel Jones to that 4-year deal. Was it worth it? We'll find out. And they franchised Saquon Barkley, unsure if they're going to make it long-term or not. A lot of their makeshift wide receiver room are free agents: Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Richie James. Multiple offensive linemen are free agents, and their defensive depth is taking a hit. A couple of free agent targets: DJ Shark, Marcus Davenport, Marcus Peters. In the first round, they could be after Zay Flowers, although we don't think he'll be there. Jordan Addison is another option, or Kelly Ringo, since Wink Martindale likes to take the toolsy corners. A couple of keys to free agency for the Giants: one, you need to adjust the pass catchers, multiple wide receivers, a pass-catching tight end to pair with Daniel Bellinger, maybe someone like Sam Laporta. Or free agents. There's a lot of tight ends this year. Wide receiver, this isn't the year to have it, so maybe make a trade for someone like Brandon Cooks or DeAndre Hopkins. The Giants also need to address the depth across the offensive line and defensive line, as well as the linebackers. And then finally, they need to put more bodies in the secondary. The corner room needs work, and the safeties, if Julian Love is not retained, need to be addressed. Everyone's favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys, are losing a decent amount of their starters this year. T.Y. Hilton, no, we know he's not a starter. But Dalton Schultz, Jason Peters, Connor McGovern, Dante Fowler, Jonathan Hankins, Leighton Vander Esch, Anthony Barr, Anthony Brown, and Donovan Wilson are all free agents. A couple of guys they could target besides anybody they re-sign is Marvin Jones, Draymond Jones, and Bobby Wagner. They have pick 26, and rarely does Dallas ever draft like you think they will, so a prospect fit for us is Bijan Robinson, as Ezekiel Elliott doesn't look like he has much left in the tank. Besides him, Trenton Simpson, Kelly Ringo, and Ronnie Hickman all make sense. Some keys to the offseason for Dallas: you need depth at running back, again as noted, or a starter to pair with Tony Pollard. Wide receiver, you could use another body there. You need to figure out tight end if Jake Ferguson is your guy. Doesn't seem like Dalton Schultz is going back. You definitely need a big presence at defensive tackle. They've tried drafting and it just hasn't worked out. The linebacker room also needs to be addressed if Damone Clark and Jabril Cox are not anything special as late round draft picks. And then lastly, it feels like the corner room for the Cowboys is always an issue, so look for them to add someone to it again this year to try and fix the problems across from Trevon Diggs. For a team that was just in the Super Bowl, the Philadelphia Eagles are not in an ideal place entering the offseason. They're barely over the cap, and they haven't even paid Jalen Hurts yet, and it's expected that he will get a big contract. Even if he's a type of player that takes a discount, it's still going to be a good amount of money. They have an insane list of free agents: Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Jason Kelsey, Isaac Seumalo, Andre Dillard, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Linval Joseph, Robert Quinn, Sue, Kaiser White, TJ Edwards, James Bradbury, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and Marcus Epps. This is a lot of starters with no money to replace. We would assume that guys like Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelsey would be the obvious choices to re-sign, seeing as they've bled Philly for years. But key impact players like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Kaiser White, we don't know how they bring them back. They might look to just find cheaper options and hope they can somewhat play as those did. Again, money aside, a couple free agent targets. Jarvis Landry would be a perfect wide receiver 3. They need to move on from Quez Watkins. They needed more depth besides the wide receiver 3. And Landry brings another veteran presence. He offers a different type of skill set, and he would be a good fit. Jerry Tillery, a defensive lineman that's disappointed, but does have some flexibility at tackle and end. And then a very cheap linebacker option they could decide to pair with the Kobe Dean is Chris Barnes. There's a lot of places they could go in the draft. They do have a decent amount of picks. Offensive line, including someone like Anton Harrison or Cody Mauch. They're both flexible, and Mauch just screams Philly. Christian Gonzalez, the corner from Oregon that had a great combine. They might have to trade up for him. We think he'll be taken by 6 with Detroit. And then Brian Branch is someone that's flexible between safety and nickel from Alabama. Keys to the offseason, look, they've got to figure out how to retain some of the players. They have the draft capital to fix some of the spots, but there's a lot of key contributors that we don't know how they afford. And so they're going to have to do a great job of moneyballing it and finding cheap options that play well. Figure out some running back depth beyond Kenneth Gainwell. Miles Sanders probably isn't resigning, so we think Gainwell is the lead back now. We assume they'll draft a 3rd or 4th round running back, which is what they always do. They're not taking Bijan. They're not taking Jahmyr Gibbs. It's just not happening. Just like everyone projected they would take a linebacker in the 1st round last year, it's just pointless. And then finally, you need to find what you're going to do with your guard situation with Seumalo as a free agent. He's probably out of their price range. And if you need depth, you need depth. If it's Cam Jurgens filling in while Jason Kelce comes back, that would be great for them, but they're still probably taking another player. And, defensive line depth, somebody needs to play over next to Jordan Davis, depending on what Fletcher Cox does. Linebackers, all that kind of stuff. Corners, Darius Slay is rumored to be on the trade block, so who knows what they're doing there. It's a lot of questions, and Philly fans are going to be in for an interesting offseason.